8. Quinn Gray. As a highly successful businessman, Reed Gray was able to provide his family with an extravagant lifestyle, which included a seaside mansion at Ponte Vedra, Florida. But his life took a terrifying turn one day in 2009 when he arrived home from work to find a troubling note left behind by his wife, Quinn. It stated that Quinn had been kidnapped and ordered Reed to remain at home, not to involve the police, and to cooperate with the abductor's demand for a $50,000 ransom. After 3 days of failed negotiations between Reed and the supposed kidnappers, Quinn appeared in a parking lot. She was physically unharmed, but hysterical. Quinn accused a 25-year-old gas station employee named Jasmine Osmanovic of holding her hostage in a motel room. But the motel manager said that Quinn didn't seem distressed during her stay. Furthermore, Osmanovic gave police audio recordings proving that he and Quinn were having an affair and that they staged the kidnapping in an attempt to extort Reed Gray. Reed initially stood by Quinn, who adamantly maintained her innocence. He mostly blamed Osmanovic and excused his wife's behavior based on her alleged mental instability. But it became increasingly clear that Quinn was not an innocent victim. It was soon realized Quinn faked the whole thing. Reed divorced her. Jasmine Osmanovic pleaded guilty to extortion and was sentenced to 6 months of probation, while Quinn pleaded no contest to the same charge and was sentenced to 7 months of probation. The defendants were also ordered to pay $43,000 each to cover the cost of the investigation into the fake kidnapping. 7. Daisia Taylor. In August 2018, deputies in Martin County, Florida were called to a home on Hutchinson Island, where a young woman had knocked on the resident's door in the middle of the night and asked them to call the police because her phone died. A responding deputy initially couldn't find the woman, but he was led straight to her when he followed the sound of a fire alarm from a nearby building. As he pulled into the building's parking lot, the deputy immediately saw a woman trying to flag him down from the 4th floor. Identified as 20-year-old Daisia Taylor, she said that she was stranded and needed a ride home after being dropped off by her friends, but that her phone was dead. She told the deputy that she pulled the fire alarm to get someone's attention. According to a report, Taylor had a South Carolina driver's license and said that she lived in Broward County, and she didn't know either address. But she stopped at the local jail first anyway, where she was booked into custody on a false fire alarm charge. 6. Jessica Nordquist. After moving from Alaska to London for a job in 2016, 26-year-old Jessica Nordquist began dating her coworker Mark Weeks. When the relationship ended, Nordquist embarked on an obsessive and bizarre stalking and revenge campaign against Weeks. She used as many as 20 different Instagram accounts to message clients at their workplace with horrific allegations against her ex, including claims that Weeks had assaulted her and gotten her pregnant. Nordquist accused their employer of knowing about the assault and taking efforts to cover it up. And she even wore a fake baby bump in a bid to make herself seem believable. The young woman's life-ruining mission took a heavy toll on Weeks, who received text messages from unknown numbers warning him that he was being watched. He lived in constant fear and became scared to sleep in his own home. In early 2017, Weeks went to the police, who told Nordquist to stop harassing the victim. 3 months later, Nordquist's friends, family, and colleagues, including Weeks, received an email claiming to be from a criminal group. It contained photos of Nordquist bound and gagged, along with claims that she had been kidnapped. A second email claimed that the abductors had broken Jessica's fingers. Investigators found a note from the supposed kidnappers on the front door of her apartment, and the interior of the home appeared disturbed, as if something chaotic had happened. But Nordquist was alive and well when law enforcement tracked her down at a bed and breakfast in the Scottish Highlands a few days later. She attempted to keep up the ruse, claiming that she had been kidnapped by an agent from Britain's MI5 intelligence group. Authorities gave Nordquist multiple chances to come clean about the kidnapping being a hoax, but she refused, and the case went to trial. she was found guilty of stalking, malicious communications, and perverting the course of justice, and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. 5. Melvin Mday. A 41-year-old Oklahoma man named Melvin Mday was reported missing by his son in August 2023 after he disappeared during a kayaking trip along the Mississippi River in St. Charles Parish, Louisiana. Mday was seen falling overboard in the middle of the night, leading authorities to initially believe that he had drowned. A large-scale search ensued, but failed to turn up any trace of Mday. In the meantime, investigators discovered that the missing man was facing serious assault allegations in North Carolina and was due in court on the very day he vanished. Authorities suspected Mday of faking his death in an attempt to escape his legal problems, but they remained tight-lipped to avoid tipping him off about their suspicions. Detectives tracked Mday's movements leading up to his disappearance via an ankle monitor he was wearing as a requirement of his bail. He was seen purchasing a prepaid phone at a Walmart store and appeared to be using it after he went missing. But he only turned it on for brief periods before it became inactive, and his trial went cold. Over a month later, he was pulled over on a motorcycle in Tift County, Georgia, for driving without a license plate. He crashed the bike while attempting to flee, and then tried to outrun law enforcement, but was quickly apprehended. Mday allegedly provided a fake name, but was identified through fingerprints, and will now face the charges that he tried so desperately to escape. 4. Sabrina Beler. During her campaign to become the next mayor of Sumter, South Carolina in 2020, 29-year-old Sabrina Beler posted footage of what appeared to be an armed kidnapping on Facebook Live. The 3-minute video showed Sabrina sitting in the driver's seat of a vehicle as a man, who was out of the camera's view, grabbed her by the hair and ordered her to drive. She screamed for the man to stop as he struck her and continued to verbally abuse her. At some point, Sabrina stopped the car and got into a physical struggle with the man. She could be heard screaming, "I have kids, I have kids," as the mystery assailant struck her in the midsection with what appeared to be a metal bat. The video ended with the man smashing out Sabrina's car windows and dragging her out of the vehicle. Sabrina eventually turned up at a police station and claimed that the ordeal began at a car wash where she was assaulted by an unknown black male. She eventually admitted to knowing the suspect as Jalen Rogers, but it was later determined that she gave the police a fake name. The man in the video, identified by investigators as 34-year-old Christopher James Eady, allegedly claimed that Sabrina had hired him to carry out a fake attack on video in a bid to garner sympathy and votes in her campaign for mayor. An arrest warrant claimed that Beler and Eady conspired to make it look like one of her political opponents was involved in the phony attack. Authorities further accused Beler of planning smear campaigns against other opponents, but they never went into detail about who they believed she was targeting and how. Sabrina was charged with felony counts of criminal conspiracy and filing a false police report. Her case was ongoing at the time of the election, and because she had not been found guilty, she was eligible to continue running for mayor. But if her plan truly was to gain support for her campaign, it failed majorly. She received the least votes out of all 6 candidates. In 2021, Sabrina pleaded guilty as charged. She received a suspended 3-year sentence along with 3 years of probation and was ordered to perform 80 hours of community service. Following her sentencing hearing, she maintained her innocence in an interview with the Sumter Item. She said that she pleaded guilty because it was the best option for herself and her family. But she criticized the handling of the case, claiming that she felt pressured and mistreated during police interrogations. More specifically, Sabrina accused the police of subjecting her to inhumane conditions and denying her a bathroom break for 6 hours. She claimed that the officer who interrogated her was a relative, and that the department had gone out of its way to cover up the alleged conflict of interest. The agency denied that Sabrina was related to the officer, but she stuck to her claims and said that she planned to pursue action against the city and police for the improper handling of her case. 3. Robert Brandel. A few days after the Super Bowl in 2019, police found 60-year-old Robert Brandel tied up in the back of his pickup truck outside a supermarket in Lockport, New York. There was a rope around his neck and attached to the headrest of a seat, and his hands and ankles were duct taped. Brandel said he had been abducted at gunpoint by two men who had bought football squares from him. He claimed that the kidnappers stole $16,000 in football square money and drove him around western New York for 2 days before leaving him bound in his car. Police doubted Brandel's story. He was suspiciously clean-shaven for someone who had supposedly spent 3 days in captivity, and he didn't seem overly panicked or emotional about the ordeal. Investigators soon discovered that Brandel had run a $50,000 football pool and had allegedly made up some of the names on the squares, hoping he'd win and get to keep most of the money. But he didn't, and he was unable to pay the winners. Brandel was charged with falsely reporting an incident and running a scheme to defraud, and was released with a future court date. 2. Julie Wheeler. In May of 2020, police in West Virginia received a call from Rodney Wheeler, who claimed that his 43-year-old wife, Julie, had fallen from an overlook at Grands View State Park. Hundreds of volunteers, professional search and rescue personnel, and members of law enforcement participated in a massive search for Julie, who was nowhere to be found. In addition to a ground search involving police canines, helicopters scoured the area from a bird's-eye view while experts rappelled down cliffs. A shoe and a cell phone belonging to Julie were found at the base of the cliff, but the effort failed to turn up any other sign of the missing woman. The timing of Julie's disappearance was a major red flag for law enforcement. She had recently been convicted of federal healthcare fraud and was due for sentencing in the near future, leading law enforcement to suspect that she and Rodney had faked her death to avoid facing punishment in the case. Julie was eventually found hiding in a closet at her home. According to prosecutors, Rodney and Julie planned to permanently go into hiding together after staging Julie's death. Rodney Wheeler was accused of repeatedly giving false statements to state and federal law enforcement throughout the investigation. He also made at least one Facebook post containing false claims about his wife's accident, needlessly sending the couple's friends, loved ones, and the community into panic and heartbreak. Rodney pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and was sentenced to 2 months in federal prison, followed by 6 months of house arrest and 3 years of supervised release. The consequences were much harsher for Julie. In addition to receiving a 42-month federal prison sentence for healthcare fraud, she was ordered to serve a consecutive 12-month term for conspiracy to obstruct justice. After serving her federal time, Julie will then go to state prison, where she'll serve consecutive terms of 1 to 5 years for conspiracy to commit a felony, and 1 to 10 years for a fraudulent scheme charge. 1. Joanna Genside. When 25-year-old aerobics instructor Joanna Genside failed to show up at her job in Harpenden, England 10 days before Christmas in 1992, her coworkers reported her missing. Her locked car was found in the business's parking lot with her personal attack alarm laying on the ground nearby. Joanna's disappearance sparked a massive and costly search by law enforcement, who put other cases on the back burner in order to look for the missing woman. 2 days later, she reappeared at her workplace disheveled and covered in mud. She claimed that she had been blindfolded and abducted by 2 men who held her captive at an isolated home and assaulted her. The young woman's story didn't add up to investigators, whose suspicions were heightened when they discovered that a former colleague of Joanna's had staged her own disappearance for attention a year earlier. Joanna eventually admitted that she lied about the kidnapping. She initially failed to give a clear reason for the hoax, but it was later learned that she suffered from an eating disorder and couldn't face the temptation to overindulge at holiday parties. Authorities pursued criminal charges against Joanna for the enormous waste of police resources that were needlessly squandered based on her deception and lies. She avoided jail time with a conditional discharge and was also spared from repaying the £20,000 that police spent on the investigation. Thanks for watching. Would you rather accidentally set off a fire alarm in a building filled with hundreds of people, prompting a completely unnecessary evacuation, or unintentionally cause people to worry for your safety because you needed a break from people and ignored your phone for a few days? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.